Say, man, we live, man. We go live over here. Say, I'm now live. Thank y'all for everybody that's voted for me so far in the NAACP Image Awards. Definitely extremely grateful for everybody that's done that. Shout out to the NAACP as an institution recognizing my work. It means a lot. You know, education is elevation. That definitely is the motto. Really, I know I wouldn't be in this position without my online community, the people that like, the people that share, the people that engage with my content. I appreciate y'all tremendously. Y'all been able to afford me and my family opportunities that I never would have dreamed of. So just want to send a personal thank you from Consciously to my social media community. And then y'all know I appreciate y'all tremendously. I'm looking for my thing. My glasses are a little dry. Let me know if y'all can hear me in the comment section because I'm using this MP3, man. I got a lot on my mind today, as y'all can tell. I'm not only grateful, I'm a little baffled and a little bit of pissed off with my state, Texas, and the way that they teach Texas history. I'm gonna get into that. And then just touch on just a little bit of news, man. Right now, the news cycle is moving so fast that I think that a part of the strategy is to really just push us into chaotic overload to make it where we flood it on our timelines and flood it in the media with just a bunch of chaos, turmoil, violence, sadness, and just, fascism. And it making it where it's hard for us to keep up. A lot of us still thinking about that Epstein files. Very few of us, are thinking about Venezuela. Even lesser of us are thinking about how Nigeria is still picking up the pieces from how they was bombed on Christmas. And then, a lot of us are still kind of moving in business as usual. You ain't thinking about how your fellow neighbor, how your fellow, X, Y, and Z is being brutalized, how they being beat up on, how a lot of the rights and lives and liberties and ethics that we were taught in this country that was always a part of the fabric, we seeing that there was either a lie or it's quickly being undone. I would say it was a lie the whole time. But something happened to me yesterday that I think makes all this make sense, and I'm gonna try to do my best of doing my storytelling. I had the opportunity of being a chaperone / volunteer for my daughter at a field trip. This field trip here in Texas was teaching them, one side was social studies, the other side was science. I was on the social studies side where I was put in this homestead, Native American nation, social studies, Texas history in this area type, setting. And when you walk into this little room, you see that there is a Native American side that's obviously settler colonialism, that's obviously painting Native Americans as somebody that have been wiped out. Because one of the question that was on the table for the students to answer, and this for like fourth graders too, y'all be specific with this. But the fourth graders are asked, how did the Native Americans live before and after Europeans settled? The question that's being asked on the homestead side is, how did Europeans maintain, adapt this, that, and the other before and after colonization? When I was in college, I learned the idea of post-colonial thought and how post-colonialism is a myth and how colonialism is never over. It's always an ongoing project. That's the reason why we have so many different land disputes and so many different sovereignty disputes throughout the country. Whether we're talking about North Dakota or we're talking about Oklahoma, there's a bunch of ways that our government keep on breaking these different treaties. But when I'm sitting there and I'm walking through the room, I'm thinking about what it was like for me as a young Black boy in 7th grade history. Shout out to Coach Puentes. You know what I'm saying? In Texas, 9 times out of 10, goddamn, whoever is your coach in 7th grade, he definitely taking history. He definitely, was that how it was for you, bro? You see what I'm saying? They gonna definitely throw something random to the coach. It's like, what you got going on here? But when I was sitting in Coach Puente's class, I'd always think like, damn, you mean to tell me ain't no Black people in this curriculum at all? I ain't thinking about it. I ain't saying curriculum. I'm thinking as an educator. As a 7th grader, I thought like, damn. So Black people wasn't a part of Texas history at all. We wasn't a part of people that came here with Stephen F. Austin. We wasn't fighting in the Alamo. Damn, we ain't only Davy Crockett and James Bowie and Stephen F. Austin. That's all we to learn about. And I started seeing that as me being a chaperone, I'm thinking about multiple things. I'm thinking about first, how the relationship that the other students had in my body as a black man, it was something that was just echoing in my head, because I know that we only make up 1.5% of educators there. And I was not an educator in that space formally. You know, at that time, the kids was asking me different things, you know what I'm saying, about Texas history. And, you know, they was asking more about the artifacts. What is this? What is this? What is this? And I still was sitting there thinking like, ain't nothing a part of Texas history right now teaching these black kids how they sit in. So of course, me being me, research over me search, I went down the rabbit hole and started to learn a little bit more about black history in terms of Texas history. And the shit blew my mind, man. It blew my mind so much that I regret it now. I talked to my wife, she was like, man, you should have asked her. But I was like, I don't want to come off as being confrontational to this short white woman. So I ain't even gonna ask her like, what about slavery? What about black people? And it's gonna make sense in a minute. But for people that's not born and raised in Texas, you know what I'm saying, they didn't get Texas history, there is zero acknowledgement, recognition, or understanding of black presence in Texas history. There is now one black person, at least when I was being taught, you know what I'm saying, they taught about black people at all, but it's a erasure. And I've learned the concept of erasure through thinking about indigeneity and settler colonialism. And thinking about yesterday too, the concept that kept on going through my mind is the settlers' move to innocence. And how the Texas Revolution, the Republic of Texas being birthed, is the way that colonial violence and anti-black suffering gets justified and allows for the settler to move to innocence based off of the bad, angry dictator Santa Anna that was trying to rob these European settlers of their rights. You're gonna get to it, man. Enslaved Africans, y'all, just to make sure we understand, they were brought to Texas. They were brought to Texas by Anglo-Americans. I'm gonna use Anglo-Americans and Anglo-settlers in this instance because I know how the algorithm do when you start talking about, you know what I'm saying, that color, the same color of toilet paper, the same color as paper. I understand how it would start to trigger the algorithm. So I'm gonna call it, you know, I'm gonna call them in this instance, talk about them as being, you know, Anglo-American settlers. And what they don't teach us in Texas, what they don't teach us at all, is that enslaved Africans were brought to Texas by Anglo-American settlers. They don't teach us that the defense of slavery was the primary cause for Texas Revolution. And that after the independence, the Texas Republic, they legally enshrined slavery and severely restricted the rights of black folks, both free and enslaved, showing you that black people have been structured in Texas history from the beginning, and how there's been an active erasure to make sure black people, black kids, black adults in Texas never understand and never know how our ancestors were also always already a part of the Lone Star history. This is foundational role to often, this foundational role is often minimized. Not only is it minimized, many instances it's always erased because this information was new to me. And I'm somebody that has a degree in African-American studies. I'm somebody that considered themselves a steward of history, and especially somebody that appreciated and loved Texas history. But that was the sanitized, romanticized way I was taught to buy into the imagery of Davy Crockett, of James Bowie. The foundation of Anglo settlement in Texas is structured and fueled by the establishment of anti-blackness and settler colonialism. As a matter of fact, I've been watching a lot of my videos back, y'all, and I'm gonna do better at saying matter of fact, you know what I'm saying? And you feel me? It's just my linguistic placeholder when I'm coming up with another thought. Anglo enslavers and settlers, especially Stephen F. Smith. Stephen A. Smith be in my mind, bro, a lot, but Stephen F. Austin is what I'm going to say. Stephen F. Austin. We know that Stephen F. Austin, this is like considered the father of Texas. There's no way for you to come to Texas and understand Texas history without it not starting at Stephen F. Austin SFA. In my town, SFA was a middle school. Stephen F. Austin was a middle school. I think Stephen F. Austin has a university in Nacogdoches, Texas. And I think there's Austin streets throughout goddamn Texas. And then the capital of Texas, Austin, is named after him. Stephen F. Austin, he's the person that I think gets romanticized and sanitized as being the great white savior. And we don't give him enough credit for being the cunning, shady, unlawful human trafficker that he was. And in Texas history, they don't tell us a lot about how the European settlers of Mexico, the descendants of Spaniards, how they helped a lot of the English settlers, the descendants of the English, you feel me, and whatever other white folks that, you know what I'm saying, it wasn't there, but never one was Spanish though, that they colluded together to be able to kill Native Americans. When y'all see that white flag, that come take it flag, that shit started here in Texas, man. Not only did it start here, I'm getting ahead of myself. 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 I'm gonna get to that part. I'm gonna get to that part. I'm trying to get into my education's elevation bag and hope that this is able to impact a lot of people that are diehard Texans like myself. Even though Texas got a shitty leadership, a lot of us on the ground, we take pride in the way this state has cultivated us and gave us value and gave us swag and gave us culture and survival skills. You know what I'm saying? And I'm one of those Texans. What I will say is that this state, it robbed us, not only black people, but of white people, of Mexican people, of Native people, of our dignity and of the real true history that this state uniquely is situated on. It don't tell us about how Texas, the enslaved people here, they don't tell us about how a lot of the white people that moved here, they moved here and were incentivized to move here because the Mexican government were trying to erase Native Americans. And they understood that European settlers, European colonizers moving to Texas was the best thing that could happen to them in terms of genocide Native Americans. The word genocide is something that when I seen this question being asked to these fourth graders and they said, how did the Europeans live before and after colonization? And it's like, even if you believe colonization is over, the genocide part is what they don't teach us in school. They'll let us dress up as cowboys and Indians, and we can put cereals in bags and put feathers on our head and wear cowboy hats and shit like that. But they don't tell us about the real colonial violence that made this relationship possible. They love to make it as if, well, the Native Americans were just so irrational. They didn't understand the land that they were living on. And those goddamn Europeans were so genius. It only took them a few years to be able to come to Texas, figure out a better way and a more efficient way to take better of the land. And then, you know, those damn Native Americans, they just died off. You know, if you had a good Texas history teacher, you know what I'm saying? I say good with quotation marks. They'll say, well, there were a lot of diseases that were brought on the boats with the Europeans because they had bad hygiene. And, you know, a lot of these sicknesses that were brought over to Texas, this is what killed a lot of Native Americans. You know, it was accidental. It was contagious. It was a virus that happened like coronavirus. You feel me? You can't put it on nobody. Whole time, the come and take it flag, Remember that. Getting into history, though. After 1821, the new Mexican government passed laws to restrict and gradually abolish slavery. This pissed off the Anglo-European enslavers and made them feel like the whole point of Stephen F. Austin convincing me to come to Texas is because I'll be able to establish a plantation economy. If you had different cities across the by lakes, they were doing sugar. Feel me? So you see that the entire slave economy is what birthed Texas Republic and what birthed white people even coming to Texas. No, I didn't say white people, Anglo-Americans, Anglos. These shady settlers, these shady settlers use legal loopholes, such as indentured servitude contracts to life to circumvent these bans. When we're taught about American history, we position the American government as the great liberators of the entire North America, even though they slickly teach us that slaves are running up to Canada, but we don't view Canada as a country of freedom. Even though we can acknowledge that a bunch of enslaved people, don't say slaves, they were enslaved people. The slavery wasn't they, you know what I'm saying, they humanity, it was they statehood, you know what I'm saying? So you say enslaved people instead of slaves. Peep down with that. But we don't get into, what's my point, bro? Oh yeah, that's what I'm getting into. We don't get into how technically America was the last country in North America to outlaw slavery. We don't get into the come and take it. It wasn't just about that cannon, it was about the property. And the way that Texas history is unique to the other states, I've said this in past live streams and past episodes, is that this state is one of the only states that have fought for slaves twice. Not only fought for slavery twice in terms of a big old war, we've given up land to make sure we sustain the plantation life. So when they say it's not heritage, I mean, it's not hate, it's heritage, they feel like their heritage is the way that Donald Trump talked about white people feeling like black folks getting civil rights hurt white people. It's because some of those white people believe it's their humanity, their God-given right to have jurisdiction over black humanity, to have black fungibility as a part of their freedom. Meaning, if I can possess black folks in a particular way, if I can dictate black reality in a certain way, this is a great measure of how I understand my freedom. If I can't measure how I can do this to black folks, I obviously using my freedom and something bad happened to me. And this is what the early Anglo settlers of Texas felt like, that their rights was being imposed on them and their humanity was being challenged because their property was being taken away from them. The 1829 Guerrero Decree conditionally abolished slavery. It conditionally abolished slavery in Mexico, increasing the tensions of Anglo settlers. This tension is something that's glossed over anytime they teach us about Texas history. In Texas history, we're taught that the reason why these Anglo-Americans wanted to fight against the bad brown dictator Santa Anna is because he was trying to centralize the government and take it away from federalism. This is how they start already sprinkling in the lost cause and states' rights shit to us Texans very early in 7th grade. Because in 7th grade, they're going to teach us that here in Texas, we always care about federalism and we always are worried about centralized government. And it's always code word for we worried about people coming and stealing our property. They don't tell us that because it don't sound as sexy. And you telling that to a 7th grader, we're going to ask some questions. But slavery was a major underlying cause in the revolution. When I say revolution, I'm talking about the Texas Revolution. The Texas Revolution that said that the Anglo settlers do not have to be under the authority of these mixed breed Spaniard indigenous people. That's definitely how they presented to it. Santa Anna is definitely racialized in many different ways without saying it was saying it type shit when it comes to thinking about how he is Mexican, how he's supposed to be brown. Not that he's a descendant of Europeans colonizers. And technically, Texas Revolution is white on white crime of white colonizers of Spain fighting with white colonizers of America, and they both fighting for how the land and how the laws of the land should govern the people and govern the property. And we ain't taught that. We ain't taught that. We ain't taught how settlers sought to protect their property. And that the Mexican anti-slavery policies is where really got the ball going. And this right here is one of the shit that really blew my mind as somebody that like cared about history and that somebody that was like, hold on now, y'all love to teach us about in the American Revolution. These are the things that came before. These are the things that happened before the American Revolution kicked off. We had the Boston Massacre and we had the Tea Party. I said Tea Party. We had the what they call it? The Boston Tea Party, right? Boston Tea Party, you feel me? The assassination of Crispus Attucks, and then it was something that shot heard around the world, and you know what I'm saying? Boston Massacre is what it was. The Boston Massacre. All these are taught to us as kids as being the precursors that really set the tensions for the American Revolution. Here in Texas, we also had something, and it was significant to slavery, and we ain't taught this. And I think that it's a great assault on us. And as I looked yesterday, while I'm trying to be a good father, you know what I'm saying, and my daughter's, school, being a mentor, trying to show these kids, these black and brown and white kids, that having a black man in the schoolhouse, all studies show that there's something that is very, instrumental in doing it. And I couldn't help to think about the responsibility, even though I wasn't their teacher, of being like, should I say something? Should I say something? Is this little poor white woman gonna take it confrontational if I ask her, like, what are niggas at? Of course I ain't gonna ask her, like, what are niggas at? I'm gonna ask her, so where are the black people at in Texas history? Are we gonna talk about slavery? I decided it was like, you know what? I don't make an aqua for my daughter. I ain't gonna make an aqua for me. I'm gonna let you make it. But now I'm thinking like, shit, I should have just really smoothly just asked, like, what about this? Because they're gonna teach us about the Battle of Gonzales. About Gonzales, They're gonna teach us about Gonzalez, but they not gonna teach us about this, man. And this right here is something that's just like, shout out to you, Opaque Goat. I appreciate y'all. Appreciate y'all in the comment section. Everybody that's voted for me in the NAACP Image Awards. You can vote for me every day. You know, the link in my bio, y'all. I'm gonna put the link in the comment section here when I come back to the comment section when I leave my little Texas history lesson. But shout out to y'all. I appreciate y'all. Again, y'all the reason why I get to put in these positions. Without the way y'all show up and give me y'all time, effort, and energy, I wouldn't even have the opportunities or resources that I'm afforded in this life that I have right now, man. So big thank you to y'all. Not one of them content curators that get past a certain point and start hot-siding and shit. Like, nah, I'm grateful. You know, back to this Texas history though, man. I feel like I want to go be a Texas history teacher, but I feel like, man, Greg Abbott had my black ass out so fast, Corey, bro. Like, nigga, what? Hey, as soon as I got, this Negro that's on social media is teaching your kids about some woke Marxist theory, and we gotta, yeah, for real, Greg Abbott.
Whole ass nigga. That nigga Drake saying nigga that ain't never got no pussy trying to make a pussy regulating rules.
Hey, just Greg Abbott, man. Greg Abbott. And before I even read this battle that blew my mind, that I feel like we should be taught in schools. All of the temper tantrums these white conservatives was pulling a couple of years ago when they was crying about their Confederate statues, saying that we want to destroy history and we got to teach real history and you can't beef with history, you can't change history. It was a bunch of Texans that was doing that shit. A bunch of Texas elected officials from the state level to the local level that was beating their chest talking about how the woke warriors were coming after history and trying to change history. If you born and raised in Texas, ask yourself, why weren't you taught about one of the first violent disturbances was the NAACP disturbances in 1831. This sparked off when a Mexican commander gave asylum to two escaped enslaved peoples. Nothing pissed off an Anglo-American like trying to take their property. The 1836 Constitution of the Republic of Texas explicitly legalized slavery and it banned emancipation without congressional consent. It also prohibited laws restricting the slave trade. So when you think about the celebration of Juneteenth and how it's not only an assault on these black, white, Spanish, Indian children here in America, here in Texas, that we don't teach about this black history, especially thinking about how Juneteenth is a Texas holiday. We don't get into this slave trade and how that great Texas Republic Constitution that they'll take. When I was in elementary school here in the state, they took me to the Washington on the Brazos. Y'all went to that in Dallas? See, yeah, see, I'm from Brazos Valley. I'm from Brazos Valley, and Washington, Texas is like it's like probably like an hour and a half, maybe from Bryan. You feel me? It's real close. So when I was in the second grade, y'all, they took our black asses to a strawberry patch farm. Gave our black asses some buckets and told us to go pick the strawberries. You weren't supposed to eat the strawberries. And when you picked them, you gave them to the people we picked it for. Swear to God, you feel me? On top of that, they taking us around. It's called Washington on the Brazos, where we seeing the Texas founding fathers, how they were writing the Constitution to give freedom to the white folks, to the Anglo-Americans. This history about the Constitution that they so massively romanticize to all of the Mexican, all of the black, all of the Latino, all of the Anglo kids, they don't teach us about this. They don't teach us that Texas, the Republic of Texas, explicitly legalized slavery and banned emancipation without congressional consent, and that's Texas congressional consent. It prohibited laws restricting slave trade. So when I'm thinking about the position of black people in the Texas Republic, or the position of black people when it's a colony of Mexico that's trying to link up with the white folks of America to erase the Native Americans in their area, I'm thinking about what is the reality of the position of black people? Where the niggas at? So when I'm doing my, research over me search, and I'm going through the archive, and I'm seeing the very first Anglo-American that came here to make their life better, came here with slaves, enslaved people. Davy Crockett coming from Tennessee, and Stephen F. Austin leaving his legal degree from New Orleans to make sure he keep his dying. His daddy died, you feel me? Stephen F. Austin, he had a daddy. His daddy died. That was in New Orleans, some shit like that. You feel me? When his daddy died, he wanted to keep the mission of, technically it was colonialism, but keep the mission of Texas alive. And through all this, y'all, Black people are erased, man. Every college football season, bro, you know what they're gonna do? They're gonna celebrate niggas being on that football field and talk about how the legacy of football here is what it is. You feel me? God, oil, and football is the holy trinity here. You know what I'm saying? And what they'll tell you is Black people right now is the reason why we have football. From Friday Night Lights, Odessa, to the University of Texas, to when they had SMU, you know what I'm saying, getting the death penalty and doing all that illegal shit in college football. They do all this about Black people's labor when it comes to entertainment. But when it comes to Black people's labor and suffering we done did politically, that shit can be erased, and it bother me, man. The position of Black people in Texas is erased. The enslaved population, y'all. This is what I learned. I'm gonna get to this at the bottom of this, right? But what I learned is that because the Mexico government was trying to incentivize the Anglo-Americans to come here and settle and try to, you know what I'm saying, wage war with these Native Americans and shit, they was giving them land. So Stephen F. Austin was the head impresario, you feel me, to be able to get the relationship with the plug for the land, which was the Mexican government. Stephen F. Austin is incentivized to give the other Anglo-Americans more land because he's really trying to establish the plantation economy here in Texas. So he's giving more land to the Anglo-Americans that have slaves. So if you have a labor force that can prove it can bring up the labor, you know what I'm saying? That's what it's going to be, right? So after we wage war with the Mexicans, you feel me? And we win, and we capture Santa Ana at the Battle of San Jacinto. We remember the Alamo. I'm gonna come back to the Alamo. I'm gonna come back to the Alamo in a little bit. But after we do all that, we write this revolution, we write this republic, we write this constitution, you know, and this constitution is written in 1836. When the reason why Texas is called the Lone Star State to the other non-Texans is because we, before we stole Canada, before we stole Hawaii and before we stole Alaska, Texas was the only state that was kind of his own country, you know what I'm saying, or that the white folks recognize as his own country. And really got to do with this. A bunch of international ideas of sovereignty has always been traced through Europeans or white people, Anglos. So Anglos only respect the sovereignty of other Anglos. So a lot of times these other states in America that were technically its own republics, its own states that were ran by Native Americans, indigenous folks of Turtle Island, because they're not of a European descent, their sovereignty isn't respected, and therefore they're not seen as a nation state. So Texas wasn't seen as a nation state when it was being dominated by the Chuttas, the Comanche, the Kiowa. You know what I'm saying? It's not seen as that. You know what I mean? It's only seen as that when we have Europeans, Santa Ana, the Spaniards come in, start pulling up their Catholic churches and stuff, and now we start to represent and understand there are people that are now in there. When we in Texas, they teach us that it's like I feel like throughout America, that Native Americans was far in between. They were sparsely here. And, you know, Native Americans got overtaken and they wasn't doing their land right. And the white folks, the Anglos came in, and that's how they was able to do it. And that's how we taught history. That's how we taught history. But getting back to this Constitution, though, the Constitution of Texas was in 1836. The population grew from 5,000 in 1836, 5,000 slaves in 1836, 5,000 slaves in 1836, to over 30,000 in 1845. From 5,000 to 30,000, showing you that the Texas economy was always already built on slavery. So regardless of how much Greg Abbott or Ted Cruz or all these, conservative crackers Because, you know, cracker, they trying to crack their whip back on their ass and say, nigga, know your place. That's the reason why our state is the first state and the only state right now to remove the Civil Rights Commission. That commission is who able to do all the investigations when we have discrimination in the state. They removed that, whipping it, cracking that whip back on us and saying that. And listen, I know from an etymology standpoint, the term cracker come from Europe, you know what I'm saying? And I know that, you know what I mean? But in terms of American history, that term has a different, you know, colloquial positioning, you know? And shit, the Texas crackers is doing that. They cracking their whip back on our ass. And they trying to let it know, like, really, really being real. I think that it was too many niggas like us niggas watching this right here in Texas and throughout the country that was starting to develop a language of speaking truth to power, starting to understand history in a way that made them shake in their boots because we're able to challenge their authority. And that's the reason why they closing it up so much. That's the reason why J.D. Vance talking about ICE going from door to door, because they got to intimidate us back into falling in line. And the more we question, the more tools we got, whether we was talking about critical race theory, which, well, my point was never taught in K through 12 schools ever. It was the boogeyman. But my point is that the reason why I got criminalized is because it was starting to give oppressed people, you know, a language to talk about our oppression. And they don't want that. They want to figure out a way to disarm niggas any way they can. So anytime we start using the word of empowerment, they figure out a way to bastardize that word to make it, you feel me, disempowering. Stay woke. They want you to be asleep out here. They started seeing niggas be too proud about being woke, and then what they do, made woke a bad thing. Anytime it comes to the ever-flowing transcendental nature of African-American vernacular English, it's because we start saying some shit, we make it cool. White folks want to get a part of the cool as well, want to get up in the Kool-Aid, don't need the flavor to be able to exploit it. And then they start to bastardize these terms. And then what we do as great linguists in the Black community, we create a new term. We create a new language. And that's the reality that we sit in. Every time we get a positioning on how we can empower and get a footing in this country, they figure out a way to politically, socially, economically take the rug from up under us. It was too many niggas getting degrees, so now we got to make y'all not have access to higher education. It was too many niggas getting jobs to make it where they ain't got to eat, sleep for dinner, so now we got to take away y'all access to employment. It's too many of y'all becoming empowered, you feel me? So we got to take y'all way of understanding history. These white folks will tell us, in order to know where you're going, you got to know where you've been. And they'll say the only place we've been was primitive monkeys, civil rights activists, and slaves. That's it. By 1845, so I ain't just like here on, man. By 1845, forced labor, forced unskilled agricultural labor, forced slave labor, forced anti-Black suffering was a cornerstone of the Texas economy. Free Black people, yeah, they always ain't like free Black people in Texas. You know how I know? Right here, research over me search, education is elevation, digging through the archive. I read this, that Black people, the free Black people, face severe legal restrictions. A law was passed soon after independence and it banished all Black people from the Republic with few exceptions. So much. They wrote in law, free Black people have no right, no space being in the Republic of Texas. Meaning that if you was a free nigga in Texas, you had no right to be here. So was you really free? With a few exceptions. Iron slave people wasn't passive and docile though. They did escape, they did resist, and they did escape. Iron slave ancestors resisted work through slowdowns, escapes, and rebellions. The Mexico anti-slavery stance made it a destination for those seeking freedom. And I'm starting to feel like I'm going too crazy, but this right here is something I learned in college that I think that's very, very, very important to where we at right now. I came across this author, her last name was Anzaldúa. Anzaldúa writes about the borders and writes about the borderlands. When I'm telling y'all this history about Texas and about how the Texas Republic was always in beef with the Mexican, you know what I'm saying, government about slavery specifically, we thinking about how territories, the conflicts happened and how the border kept on moving. What I learned in college when I started learning about Anzaldúa is that for a lot of people that we refer to as Mexicans, they really colonized subjects of the Spanish colonization and they never crossed the border crossed them. So when I'm getting into thinking about these decrees and getting into thinking about how our ancestors resisted slavery, it's worth noting that they purposely don't teach us that our ancestors was running south of the border for freedom, because they want us to, they want to make sure we see the Mexicans as being the big bad brown people, the dictators. So at the beginning of the year, at the beginning of last year, a lot of niggas was beefing with me because I said that black folks should be concerned with the mass deportation, and y'all start telling me that Mexicans ain't never did nothing for us. Just because you don't know something, don't mean it didn't happen. There's a history of our ancestors not trying to leave Texas and go away to Canada. They're going to Mexico. To this day, we have affluent black neighborhoods in Mexico that are started from people that seek asylum and that escape slavery for here in Texas. It's the reason why these Anglo-Americans, Stephen F. Austin and his gang, was so scared, because they knew niggas was coming here. When I was going through the archive, I'm born and raised in Bryan College Station, Texas. I'm seeing, you feel me, that these different founding fathers was going to my hometown, and they were scared and worried about, they enslaved people leaving, they labor leaving, they property leaving. I think that the kids should know that. I think that the Mexican anti-slavery stance should be taught to our kids, was a part of the motives for the Anglos to want to fight for their freedom, because they feel like they had freedom to hold people captive. And because they couldn't hold people captive, they thought they was being held in captive. That's something that we should be talking about, we should get into. The Mexican anti-slavery stance made a destination for those seeking freedom. Speaking of freedom, man. Speaking of freedom. I'm gonna save it. I'm gonna come back to my camera on right here. Get back to here, man. Get back to here right here. And when I was sitting there at my daughter's, field trip, and I'm sitting there, I'm looking at all the artifacts. I see the yoke, something they used to have on the ox. I see they got a little miniature log cabin. I see they got like a little machine they used to do the corn. I see they have these glass cups, these metal cups. And then I see a cotton ware. And this cotton ware, a measure, like literally, something that you put the cotton on. I chuckled to myself and thought, I wonder who was picking that cotton. The downplaying of slavery and Black people's experience in Texas history is not accidental. It stems from a specific historical process. The lost cause narrative in the US was a manufactured thing by Karen, or what they called the Daughters of Confederacy. The lost cause myth of the Civil War is a myth that is known to take hold across the South. It's reframed through the Confederacy's fight for the noble struggle for states' rights and the Southern heritage to liberty sovereignty. We know that the cause of this slavery in America, the cause of slavery down here in Texas, is because of Northern aggression, and because those Northerners just